Today we're going to be doing intermediate. I'm going to show you traditional grip and I'm going to show you. This is Clayton Skinner. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Beat. Greetings. My name is Clayton Skinner, and this episode of Beyond the Beat is going to be part 2 of the Moeller pull-out accent, and we're going to be bouncing in threes today. So in this episode, basically what I'm going to be doing is we're going to be going over the pumping motion. We're also going to be going over the Moeller pull-out accent. But what we're going to be doing that's different is with our opposite hand, we're going to be playing either quarter notes or eighth notes. And of course, in this episode specifically, we're going to be bouncing in threes. So we're going to learn how that translates, how they compare to each other. How does it compare to be playing quarter notes along with triplets or bouncing in threes, from quarter note to quarter note? How does it compare to be playing eighth notes with your right hand and, say, playing the triplet pattern or the three pattern with your left? They're both very different rhythms. Now, this is going to get very tricky. There's going to be some very intricate patterns being played, but in the long run, this will really help with your understanding of rhythms. So, let's begin. So we could dive right in here. The first exercise, actually the first two exercises, I should say, involve bouncing in threes while playing quarter notes. So, remember now, I'm calling it bouncing in threes specifically. These are obviously just triplets, eighth note triplets, that'll expand from, say, beat 1 to beat 2 to beat 3 to beat 4. So you're just playing, like in the first exercise, you're playing the Moeller pumping motion while bouncing in threes. And so every time you accent, every time you bring your hand up for another pulse or another pump, you're going to bring your opposite hand in and play the quarter notes. That's what we're going to call them. We're going to call them quarter notes. So you're going to basically just be playing. Every time your hand hits 3 times, you line it up again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's pretty easy. Watch the demonstration and make sure you use the metronome. So that was a nice, easy start. The next exercise, we're going to be doing the pull-out now. Now remember, the pull-out lines up with, basically, in these particular cases, it lines up with 2 and 4. So you're bouncing from 1 all the way into 2, stopping at 2, starting at 3 again, bouncing to 4, stopping at 4, and then wait until 1 and continue. Remember, your right hand is what's going to be keeping time. So if you have your metronome set to a quarter note like I do, you're going to tap along with the metronome and you'll do the pull-out accent on 2 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Watch my demonstration. It's pretty easy. I'll see you in the next exercise. Now, the second half of these exercises, the second half of the PDF, is going to be the comparing of regular eighth notes with eighth note triplets, or basically bouncing in threes while playing eighth notes, or, if you're, anyway. This can get very, very tricky. When comparing these two rhythms together, they form what's called a polyrhythm. Now, if you're not familiar with what a polyrhythm is, I suggest that you check out the video where I explain polyrhythms, or check out another video explaining polyrhythms. What a polyrhythm is when you play two separate rhythms at the same time, usually with two different limbs. I mean, obviously you can get so intricate that you're playing 4 different rhythms with obviously 4 different limbs. In this case, you're only doing 2 limbs. So what you're doing is you're playing even eighths with one hand and you're playing, say, eighth note triplets with the other. They line up differently. So if you're looking at the PDF, the exercise 3, the third exercise on the page, is your example of a polyrhythm. Now, polyrhythms are usually rated a certain number against a certain number. In this particular case, it would be 12 against 8. To make it a little bit more simple, you could cut that in half and make it 6 against 4. That's probably the way that you should probably look at it, 6 against 4. So for every 6 hits with one hand, you're playing 4 with the other. Times that by 2 because it's one whole bar, you're playing 12 hits and then 8 with the other. So pay attention to how these line up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate them playing slowly. It's not an easy concept to get. You're going to have to look at the PDF and watch how these exercises line up or how these hits line up, and then watch the demonstration of how I do it and listen to how it's played. Take this really, really slowly. If you have a problem with this, should just stick with it, but at the same time supplement other exercises that involve polyrhythms so that you get that sound and you get that feel in your head, and then after that it should be no problem. Another helpful factor, something that you can work on, if you're able to play the pattern, is you don't necessarily have to, like, okay, so for instance, whatever hand that you're playing the eighth notes in, there's 2 different ways you could do it. You could look at it from a way of playing just an easy, like, kind of a hinged tapping, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, where you're playing the like proper single stroke pattern using only your wrist. Or you could use, like, say, the pumping motion, similar to, like, the Moeller, it is the Moeller pump, but the pumping motion you would use, say, if you're playing on a hi-hat, like if you're playing fast 16ths or even fast 8ths. Try to work it both ways. I mean, sometimes one could be a little bit easier than the other, but you never know. You may find one that you like, but you should make sure that you work the 2 of them. Obviously, the more exercises that you can get, the more you can develop by playing one thing, you benefit far greater than if you just play everything, one way and then move on and don't ever look at it again. So just something to think about. A good little tidbit of advice for all these exercises is while you're playing along with it, sometimes it might help as you get started. I mean, obviously you don't want to always play like this, but sometimes it will help if you tap, say, whatever hand that you're playing with. If you're playing the quarter notes or the eighth notes, it doesn't matter. Whatever hand that you're playing those rhythms with, tap it along and then join the bouncing hand in. This works with the pumping motion, the continuous bounce, and it also helps with the pull-out accent bounce. It's just something you want to think about, something you might try doing. Exercise 4, now it's going to be doing the pull-out. You're still going to be playing eighth notes with your one hand and then doing the pull-out with the other. This one will be a little bit tricky as well because you have to stop on the 2, continue with this, and then line it up again. One of the biggest things that makes this exercise difficult is not actually necessarily playing it continuously. It's starting it on the fly and able to continue with the exercise without making any mistakes. That's true with many different exercises. I mean, it's one thing to be able to kind of play it and then, just say, oh yeah, I could play the exercise on the go, that's fine. But to be able to stop, start it again, stop, start it again, and line everything up on the go as soon as you start, that's where the trickiness comes in. That's where the true skill lies. So make sure that you're comfortable with the last exercise, and then try this one. So just remember that you want to make sure that everything lines up properly, and you keep that eighth note hand going while stopping and doing the pull-out accent with whatever hand you're bouncing with. Something that'll help you with these, like I always say, is you want to practice this a lot, but something that'll help with this is to make sure that you use a metronome, just like I did. Sometimes it does help to actually line up the metronome playing eighth notes like I was doing, if you're playing eighth notes. Sometimes just playing along with your one hand without playing the other hand to the eighth notes, you can actually listen to see how they're played or how everything lines up. The metronome will keep you precise. So you want to make sure that you do that. When I was playing the quarter notes, I only had it lined up to the quarter note. You may not even want to use a metronome. I would advise you do, but anyway, I'm babbling. So just make sure that you practice this lots. Same old advice. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you check out part 3 when it comes out of the Moeller pull-out accent, where we're going to be discussing bouncing in fours. So check it out. See you next time.